Welcome to this presentation of the Rotary Club of North Bethesda, Maryland, USA. Our club was established in 1974. We meet every Friday morning at 7:45 a.m., and we often invite guest speakers to give presentations on all kinds of interesting subjects. Please contact us through our website at nbrotary.org. And thanks for watching. Our speaker today is Jane Meyers, who has been leading the development of libraries in Zambia and other places. She will be introduced by our Rotary Club member, Linda Bergcross.
It really is my pleasure today. I was so happy that Jane could come and speak to us about her organization, the Labuto Library Partners. Jane's had experience in library development and implementation for over 4 decades. She has organized libraries for the USAID's Office of Women in Development, the Sahel Development Program, Asia Bureau, and other offices to coordinate them with the USAID Library. At the World Bank in the early 80s, she established and marketed library and information services in the bank's Central Agricultural Advisory Department. And in the mid to late 1980s, under a World Bank finance project in Malawi, Jane managed the establishment of the government's network of agricultural research libraries and was cited in Science magazine for her innovation in bringing the first CD-ROM to Africa. From the early 1990s to 2001, she served as a consultant to the Winrock International Institute for Agricultural Development, the FAO, and the U.S. National Agricultural Library, among others, including Johns Hopkins University Center for Communication Programs. She has given invited presentations at conferences all over the world, including Pennsylvania, New Jersey Library Associations, library schools at the University of Alabama, South Carolina, Pittsburgh, Drexel, and on and on. And today it is our pleasure that she will tell us about this wonderful organization.
Linda, I had no idea you were going to do all that snooping around about who I am and my background and stuff. Some of that I haven't even thought about for so many years. But I guess the point is that we are an organization that creates library services, and you may have heard of other organizations that they're essentially book donation programs or a number of other things, creating community libraries, and almost never are they run by professional librarians. And so I'm a very proud member of my profession, and the work that we do has been supported by other librarians around the country, around the world, in fact, because we're all kind of in this struggle or this crusade to help people understand the role that libraries can play and the important work that libraries do. I got the impression when Linda asked me to speak, she was interested not just in what we were doing, but what libraries were doing now. And I was really glad to hear that, because I'm here to show you what we're doing, but also as an example of what libraries are doing in your society and in societies all over the world these days. So our organization is named Labuto, and I'm often asked, where is Labuto? Labuto is not a place. It is a word in the Bemba language, one of the languages spoken in Zambia and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and it means light and enlightenment. Our organization was founded 15 years ago, or 16 years ago, so last year was our 15th anniversary, and it was a learning experience for our organization, as with probably you all, and listening to you talking about switching from promoting yourselves on paper to films. We had a board that's been around, and thinking about how we're going to celebrate our 15th anniversary and realizing we'd have to do it virtually for the first time ever. So I think everyone in the world can identify with that right now. But what we do, the 15th anniversary was a time for us to sort of take stock and look back at what we have done and accomplished over these 15 years. And It may be a surprise that the aim of this organization, that is very specifically a library organization, is that we are focused solely on children for reasons that you'll see in a minute. And our vision, what we are aiming for, is a world where all children and youth are able to realize their rights and empowered to reach their full potential. And the mechanism for us moving toward that vision is through creating public libraries, like I hope we're all familiar with here in this country. And we're starting in Zambia, although 16 years into it, we still are. Sorry, am I okay being heard?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So I won't go over this great big long thing, but it's just to show you that we're an organization that, you know, it started out with a very careful plan, and that is what we have been carrying out all these years. But you know, basically what our objectives are to create libraries. As Linda sort of said, I was working in international development in other contexts and living in Malawi as well, working on a World Bank project that wasn't focused, that wasn't this way. It was an agricultural research project for Malawi's research program. But I noticed, and also, you know, giving birth to my first child, living in Malawi, and then living back in Zambia again 10 years later with 2 children, it was, my focus there was more on how children, on the lives of children in these places, and also looking at what my colleagues, at what libraries are doing and not doing. And basically, libraries were not serving children at all. And so I did talk about it a lot, and I could have written papers about it forever and talked about it forever, but people weren't going to understand what libraries could do unless we just did it. So that's where we bit the bullet and decided, okay, we are going to create libraries and measure their impact to show our colleagues in particular what they should be doing. So our objectives really are to create these libraries and show how libraries support children holistically and also support or advocate for their rights. And so essentially we're doing this in order to build the capacity of libraries, of communities, of educators to do the same thing. So it's modeling. And so our main ways of approaching this is that we partner with local organizations. We do not own the libraries after we create them. We work with organizations who take over after we create them, take over the operations of them. And we obviously co-create these facilities with the organizations and with the society and the communities that they serve. We, of course, have really good collections of books and digital resources. The number one thing you all expect from a library. But we also do other important things that really are what makes a library anywhere successful, is that we have good programming and we carry out effective outreach. Those are the other really 2 important and fundamental components of a successful library. We have been growing. We've been continually improving these library services and measuring their impact in order to know where we should be going with them. So I'm realizing that this little thing is going to get in the way. I'll keep moving it around if it doesn't, hope that doesn't bother you. Why children need to be a focus, and why it's sort of shocking that the libraries that do exist are not serving them, is that Zambia, where we're starting, is typical of countries in sub-Saharan Africa, that unlike European countries that have the opposite demographics, most people in sub-Saharan African countries are youth, children and youth. And the median age in Zambia is 17. It's the 5th youngest in the world. And so, and there are libraries that, there's actually a library science department at the University of Zambia. There are libraries around the country, not particularly good ones, I'm afraid to say. the programs for educating librarians there don't teach children's services. So the librarians don't offer children's services. So it's, and yet they'll say, oh, well, we should be supported, and, you have to understand that we're very, very important. But you're not important if you're not addressing what is important in your country and your society. So just very quickly, identifying what the needs are, the particular needs of young people in that country and in that region, which is what our model is based on, is the needs of that we feel and we know now that libraries actually can address in many ways and make a contribution toward alleviating. One of the main things is HIV/AIDS in Zambia. It's one of the countries hardest hit with orphaning by HIV/AIDS, but also just systemic breakdown that as a result of that. Also, orphaning or displacement due to conflict is another issue in that region. Poverty, of course, is not universal. I mean, there are people who are not living in poverty in Zambia and any other sub-Saharan African country, but the ones who are completely left out. And so there are millions of children who are just there and trying to eke out an existence. And what that results in very often is that they're isolated from their communities. And in societies where communities and people being together and working together is just fundamentally important to your identity, this isolation really is kind of annihilating, actually. And it is something that doesn't need to exist. Zambia is like Lusaka. Zambia is one of the most densely populated, one of the most urbanized countries in Africa, if not the most urbanized in terms of where the population lives. And so Lusaka, Zambia is just sort of teeming with young people. And when there is a problem of orphaning, what happens is that you are surrounded by street kids, what they call street kids in Zambia. You also find a lot of child-headed households. If both parents die and there's not a grandmother to take you in, you really even find situations of children caring for other children. When we think of young people, we think of school. And formal education in schools is a closed system. It's an essential system. And we're learning more about that now with the coronavirus pandemic, about the importance of education and what we need to do in order to make that available to everyone. But my focus when we were establishing this organization was really on the young people who were left out in huge numbers in that area. And a formal education is a closed system. You're either in school or you're out of school. People have been concerned about girls' education a lot. And for the longest time, the only solution people could think about or how to address that is that you give scholarships to girls. And scholarship programs are kind of a mixed bag. We've been involved with that a lot ourselves, and we've seen a lot of big organizations come and go and sort of realize that just handing out scholarships is very limited, particularly if an organization's presence in a country, say on a contract with the US government, is only for a period of years. If you're going to be giving people scholarships, you have to be consistent about it. Also though, if suddenly all the scholarships that are available go to girls, that causes other social problems with the boys who are left out. And also though, even if you do get a scholarship, formal education, when it is accessible, is very, very often of a very poor quality, mostly because of overcrowding and just the inability for society to cope with the volume. These educational opportunities through schools are largely inaccessible to children with disabilities, even ones that usually would not be considered in our society to be debilitating or, you know, eliminate people's ability to participate in society, like deafness. But if you don't have ways of helping deaf children, very often they're just hidden away. And in rural areas, I mean, I've been showing a lot of images of urban areas, but in rural areas, children are usually very, very far from resources that they need. Lots of gender inequality still exists, even though there's a lot of attention being paid to that as well right now. And gender-based violence is another very, very heartbreaking and difficult problem that a number of aid organizations and are looking at and trying to address in different ways. There's also, yeah, if you're looking at the most vulnerable young people in society, you also encounter lots and lots of very sad and difficult stories of young girls in particular, and what their lives ends up being. So when we talk about gender inequality, we're not really talking about, you know, how much women are paid versus men. We are literally talking about how the fate of many girls, particularly in rural areas, is just that there's no possibility of an education. You're married off at a very, very young age because as a result of poverty. So I was also, and this isn't unique to Africa, but a lot of these different problems exist elsewhere. They just really are very, very present in sub-Saharan African societies, and in Zambia in particular, the country that along with Malawi, that I lived in and know best. The people that work in our libraries are looking at all of these different issues and thinking about what we can do to help them. But so in defining these problems altogether, we sort of have come to think of them as isolation, without support from family or society. When children and girls and boys are suffering due to these various things, it strikes us as being something that we would call isolation. And in thinking about what we can do, we've decided that the solution to isolation is connection. And because that would be as the opposite of isolation, and as a way of thinking about what we do, what the essence is of what we do. So just very quickly, I'll kind of run through what our libraries do, how to show how public libraries can help. And you all may be thinking this is ridiculous, those problems are very serious, what in the world can a library do related to early marriage and various things. And I guess I'd like to show you some of the things that libraries not only can do, but that we have done. So we believe the public libraries offer a route to connection and community. I mean, this is something people could, this is common sense, that actually bringing people together is a way to create connection. In working with the street children in Zambia, I noticed that they very often are not allowed in any public building. If they're not in school, they can't really go into other places, and every door seems to be shut to them. So the really fundamental thing about public libraries is that they are often the only door open to children and youth to whom every other door is closed. Libraries can be an inclusive complement to formal education and a cost-effective alternative to rarely existing school libraries. People often say, well, what about school libraries? You need that too. Well, yes, countries need a lot. Zambia actually needs funding for schools, period, and to think about school libraries as being a solution I think that's where we can see that the notion of a public library that serves in school and out of school children and doesn't, and of all ages, etc., that it's just a more cost-effective approach to trying to complement formal education when it is or and isn't accessible. But even though we are talking about public libraries, one thing that we know our libraries can do and have done is improving teaching quality. This is a slide of somebody that we brought out through the Fulbright program to teach children's services at the local university's library science program. And here she is in one of our libraries talking to teachers and showing them how to use science materials that are in a good library collection to improve their teaching. And I mentioned about girls and boys and it being a problem just giving scholarships to girls. Libraries are a place where you can educate girls without depriving boys. So it doesn't have to be an either or thing with an open system like this. It's also a place where you can support vulnerable and special needs children along with school children, and they bring, and it's what we have seen, at least in Zambia, that this is about the only environment where you see those children coming together in one place and without stigma. Libraries also build communities. So this is at the opening of our first rural library, and the two of the people dancing here are our librarians. One of them is the person that runs our program in Zambia. The other runs our main library, dancing with the women in that community, because the advent of this library was a hugely exciting event for the community. Libraries also reach the marginalized children. Again, they can offer programs for teenagers in various ways, including some surprising ways, like a program that we have done with funding from the US government on menstrual health programs for girls. We learned that offering the same kind of program to boys and helping them ended up being a really important way to fight against gender-based violence, for example, just awareness and peace between the two genders. Early childhood education, that again, it's not something that a school system can necessarily solve. People pretty much understand how important early childhood education is, but if you have an overburdened educational system and budget, and you can't even get enough teachers for schools and have enough schools for this burgeoning society of young people, then thinking about putting an early childhood program on top of that is really difficult. But if public libraries that are open places, just like here in this country, early childhood education happens very well and very effectively in public libraries. I sort of don't think, I always thought that I didn't know what I would have done when my kids were really little if it weren't for the local library, that I could take them to programs. And libraries can also teach young mothers reading as well as English. And learning to speak English is a very, very important thing in this country that was, of course, a British colony. And so in order to really get anywhere, you need to learn English. You maybe need to begin to learn to read in a local language, but then learning English is really important. And we've found that focusing on young mothers as a way to help them go beyond their circumstances and get a job, teaching them English is a really important thing. But we also noted providing childcare while they are coming was essential as well. The libraries are a place to give youth a voice, and especially girls who didn't have quite the voice that boys have had traditionally there. Let's see, I can't even remember what this top of this slide said, and I can't really read it right now, but the point is that we have lots and lots of resources that give children and programs that help not only give a voice, but a means of communicating and inspiring them with stories. We have art programs that, use the beautifully illustrated picture books as inspiration. We have a wonderful drama program that has actually, from which a couple of the kids that have been in it have actually become professional actors, and the same with our art program. It's not a vocational training program, but these are ways that things that are not taught in school, but ways to develop talent. And we show movies. In this bottom right-hand corner, kids enjoying a movie. Who doesn't? If any of you know any young person that didn't ever want to see a good movie, well, it just is a pretty universally liked thing. Of course, what's important is that what may be accessible are not very good movies, and we make sure that there are good movies. And as you might guess, the most popular movie that we have shown in our libraries is Black Panther in the last couple of years. And we have sign language story time, and that's something that grew organically. We found a poster of the Zambian sign language, and we put it up in the library, and immediately, someone saw it and immediately kind of went out into the community and to people that they knew who were deaf, who knew others who were deaf, and all of a sudden, just dozens of deaf children showed up in the library, and community volunteers have come in and offered story time. It was by sign language story time. And again, focused on finding volunteers in the community who can use this library as a way to help others. And 3 times a week, we offer a sign language story time. It's very popular. And we also, of course, have we have great collections, really great collections of books and digital resources, including programs that we've created to teach children to read, very young children to read, or older children if they haven't yet learned to read, in the 7 Zambian languages, because you do need to begin reading in the language you're most familiar with. So there was a need for that, and that teaching was happening in person, but we have created these computer-based programs to do that. In breaking down the gender barriers, we have had a grant we had a 2-year grant from PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, that you probably are all familiar with. It's considered really about the most successful and the most important foreign aid program that the US has had in recent years, that's saving millions of people's lives, not just in Africa. But they noticed a few years ago that the HIV infection rate for adolescent girls was going up all of a sudden after years and years of progress. And they put out a call for this program called DREAMS, that looking for solutions to, they realized that this wasn't happening. It wasn't just a medical problem. It wasn't just a matter of making antiretrovirals available, but it is something exacerbated by all of those other problems that I was talking about, and particularly gender-based violence, early marriage, etc. And they knew that keeping adolescent girls through school and finishing secondary school dramatically cut their chances of getting HIV/AIDS. So there were about 800 applicants for these PEPFAR DREAMS grants around the world, and 54 organizations received the grants. And we were one of them, and certainly the only library group that kind of had the chutzpah to think that we could tackle a problem like that. And in fact, we had a great deal of success with our DREAMS grant. We fight early marriage. Again, that's another problem that you think, what in the world you can do? In our rural libraries, by having coding camps and maker spaces that help people not only learn skills for livelihoods. And I'm really thinking about the solar cooker that we just saw, Roger Haynes Paul was presenting. I kind of like to follow up with him later and see if making the solar cookers in our rural libraries might be a helpful thing. But there's a real direct relationship between being able to make a living and not having to force your daughter into an early marriage. And so the other thing about coding is that it teaches critical thinking skills, and it just gives girls and young women a view of a broader perspective on the world. And besides teaching useful skills, it's not that we want everyone to learn to do coding, but how that helps self-esteem, with various other things that keep girls down. But our maker spaces are, we don't have a 3D printer in our maker space like the libraries here in Washington do. We don't have necessarily a lot of technology because we were focusing on school skills that give a practical rural livelihood. And we decided on those through focus groups and discussion with the community. What is it that they wanted to focus on? So making mats and barbering. We just bought a seed oil press for people. It's one of the few agricultural areas of Zambia, actually, and there was a need for agricultural processing support. Anyway, so that's kind of a quick run through with some of the highlights of different things that that I hope illustrate that we can have something relevant to addressing these important problems. And the library's potential for meeting these needs just was not appreciated. And these libraries are there to show the possibilities. I mean, we are there to serve children and to change people's lives, but also to show what the possibilities are and the impact, the actual impact of these libraries. So just really quickly by the numbers, in these years since we opened the first library in 2007, we've had more than 1.65 million visits by over 162,000 young people. We know that these numbers are conservative because getting accurate data is difficult and was particularly a challenge at the beginning. Okay, I'm running over time. We've supported nearly 7,000 children in acquiring literacy. We've offered technology access and instruction to over 12,000 children and youth. We've had programs for young mothers and for the deaf, and programs that have kept over 1,500 girls in school and AIDS-free. That was the outcome of our PEPFAR Dreams program, and provided life-changing mentoring. And the mentoring is a really important aspect of what the libraries do, and to more than 3,500 adolescents. These libraries are wildly popular, and although just their existence isn't, sorry, I'm having a very difficult time getting my phone to stop making that noise. Are you hearing that? Oh, sorry. Maybe if I just take a second. Okay. Just the existence of the libraries where there was none before, it just suddenly there's no library, and then it exists, and you can see children come out in the hundreds and the thousands, and they are wildly popular. The libraries are the most heavily used of these libraries, has an average of 2,500 visits each week. And many children that come to the libraries come every chance that they get. So just quickly, if I could, the Lobutho Library Network, we used to be called something different, Project, and we changed our name to Partners to emphasize the partnership. Our first library, just to show you what we had this first library that opened in 2007. It actually has a birth and death date there because of challenges that the host organization had, that they weren't able to maintain it, and for child protection purposes and others, we sort of withdrew that as a Lobutho library. Our second library was built with funding from Dow Jones and Company and Oprah's Angel Network. The third library opened in 2014, our first rural library, funded by Comic Relief and the Open Society Initiative of Southern Africa. I want you all to know that every library we've opened since has been supported by a USAID program called the Office of American Schools and Hospitals Abroad, we now are a very sort of solid partner. Actually, every library we've opened has been opened by the U.S. ambassador, as well as Kenneth Kaunda, the first president of Zambia. This is one that we've just finished construction of this library, funded by American Schools and Hospitals Abroad, but it hasn't opened yet because of the coronavirus. We also have funding from ASHA to be constructing another library near Lusaka that's hosted by the St. Daniel Comboni Sisters. It's under construction still. And then we've gone back to that first library that was built by Dow Jones and Company and received 2 ASHA grants for further development of that library into a regional training center and to put in an early childhood center and various other things. And we are now hoping to get another ASHA grant to go to our first rural library and further develop it, and with various things, including being an American center, if you know about American Corners. Throughout this time, and I promise I'm wrapping this up now, we've found that health challenges were really important things that we can address and that we need to always be helping children and keeping them safe. And so cholera was something that we've always dealt with. Kids learned about washing their hands in our libraries from the beginning, since cholera was sort of a regular problem during the rainy season in Zambia. Obviously other pandemics like the HIV/AIDS one, and of course now the coronavirus pandemic. And so we immediately did a number of things to try to help children be safe. And we had to close down the physical buildings of the libraries, but we were able to do a lot of things in distance outdoors, especially in the rural area. And now just what happened last Sunday, the exclamation point at the end of all of this is that the reading room, the main building that houses our collections, was burned in Lusaka, and it was destroyed by fire just last Sunday. So that's what we've been dealing with this week, is talking with children about trying to quell their fears, trying to make sure the space is secured. The fact is, we have that grant that I mentioned from American Schools and Hospitals Abroad, and a brand new collection is on its way by boat, thanks to World Vision, on its way to Lusaka. So we've been able to assure them the books and the collection will come back, and ASHA will help us rebuild this building. So what we've learned about all of this is that these children are counting on us, and the importance of all of this mentoring and these relationships with the children that really look at them holistically, and creating a safe and joyful community is really important. And so that's sort of what we said at the opening of our first library, that all of these people are doing all of this for them as an expression of love and caring for them. And that, I know I'm
awesome. That's okay. Jane, thank you so much. It was very enlightening. And if you have, we'll take a few questions if anybody has any questions, if you wouldn't mind, if anybody has any questions.
And maybe I should stop sharing this screen.
That's all right. You're good. Yeah. Any questions?
I got a quick question, if I might. Thank you, Jean. That was very interesting. Good work. Very good work you're doing. Can you tell us, once you open the library, assuming you open it with full materials, what's your biggest challenge after that in terms of what you need to make the library better or keep it going?
Oh, I love that question. No one's ever really asked me that at that point. Yeah, we when the library is open, they are fully equipped.
Assuming you're funded by a large corporation, you're all set up, all the materials are shipped over. What's the Is it staffing? What are the big issues?
It's operations. American Schools and Hospitals Abroad, I don't know if any of you have ever heard of this program. They are very unique in our foreign aid program in that and anybody's foreign aid program, in that they only fund construction or renovation of buildings and purchase of durable commodities. So no operational support at all. And so that, Dow Jones and Company helped us build a building, but that didn't give us the money to hire a staff and to keep things going. And the same is true with American Schools and Hospitals Abroad. So our operational funding is mostly gathered by our board of directors here about fundraising. We have some big and small and lots of small donors. A lot of people in the library community become regular donors. If any of you would want to become supporters of our work, in fact, we have had Rotary Club, the Beltsville, Maryland Rotary Club was sort of our backbone for a long time, helping us get started, and individuals that have stayed as supporters. That's where at the beginning I mentioned very quickly that we don't own, except for our model library in Lusaka and this one down in the rural area, which we are now working with the U.S. Embassy in Zambia to create those as model libraries and perhaps host what they call an American Corner. For those, we're always seeking through different grants that support these different programs that they also pay this, go to pay the salaries of the staff that carry out those programs. So we're kind of like sharks. We can't stop swimming. We are always looking for funds to support the staff. But the other libraries are owned and operated by host organizations that are committed. We have an MOU, and we bring in all these libraries. We train the staff, but they are responsible for keeping the lights on and for allowing us to continue to update the training of their staff, and they support the staff. But we also have a model that, because of that, we try to have the most sustainable model imaginable. So having them powered by solar power, for example, it's a big upfront cost, but the operations are much less. And using solar and finding something sustainable in that way is really important. Also helping them think about how to mobilize community volunteers to be coming in and offering relevant programs. That volunteerism is a really important part of that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know we are at the bottom of the hour. And thank you, Jane, so very much for coming today and talking to us. It was a wonderful presentation. I know I learned a lot. I'm very excited for what you're doing and the work that's being done. With that, I wish everybody a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.